in school either. So, all right, so welcome. So I'm so excited to have you all here and to be able to pick these moms' brains on just how homeschooling went for you. And because I feel like you guys all were like pioneers in this, you know. Like now you...
Not me.
Not you. Well, right, yeah. But more so just doing it when hardly anybody else is. And even I was talking to a friend just a few days ago, and she said she got a knock at her door from the state, you know, because it wasn't really legal back then. And it's like, oh my, you really, I can't even imagine, you know, kind of really going against the grain like maybe you guys felt you did, or maybe you didn't. But yeah, just the looks you probably get. And we can't go outside in the middle of the day because people will ask too many questions, and we're not really ready for that. So yeah, I'm just so grateful that it was you and not me. Because I'm more so grateful that we can just, you know, glean your wisdom and yeah, pick your brains and everything. So thank you so much. So let's start with a word of prayer and some scripture. So, Holy Father, I just thank you so very, very much for this beautiful day that you've given us. And I just pray that you'll just guide our hearts and our minds as we learn more about how homeschooling, what it looked like for these ladies, and just be able to just gather their wisdom and knowledge and be able to go home and just homeschool our children and love our families well. Thank you so much for all that you continue to provide for us each and every day. In your holy name we pray. Amen. All right. So I always feel like this talk, I probably do this every time, but it always makes me think of the Titus 2, you know, the ladies, just how the scripture tells us that the older women, not that you're older women, you know, like that they should likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands and to love their children. So, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. So, yeah, and I think we'll just go on ahead and get started. So we had a lot of questions, and I feel like they all just dug into the nitty-gritty right away. So I want to start a little more lighter and just ask, like, what was your favorite thing about homeschooling? So, and we can just go around, and whoever wants to answer, we can.
I just love being with my children all the time and just teaching them things that I felt like I was never taught, and just on a daily basis, just sharing the Lord with them and teaching them, like, you know, skills, just like life skills that they needed to know when they got out of home. I just really like that.
Yeah, I would say for me too, just being with my kids. I loved being able to get up in the morning and eat breakfast together and then spend time and worship time at the piano and then reading the Bible and studying together before we got started. I really felt like that started the day, and I don't feel like I would have gotten that just because I'm not that organized and structured if I put them on the bus.
Yeah, I enjoy being with the kids and just not having to push them out the door quickly because that'd be awful. We're just too slow in the morning. And just the flexibility and ability just to be slow and get our school done and learn things together and do things together. That's been a blessing, and it will be for many more years as I'm still doing it.
All right.
I guess the same thing of just being with the kids, but also the kids being with each other. I just think that as my kids have gotten older, it's just really, they're just good friends. And it's just really nice to see how they encourage one another in their spiritual walk. And so not only my friendship with my children, but also their friendship with each other, I think has just been so foundational in their adult life. So.
Yeah. All right. So before we go any further into the questions, I would love it if you guys would each just give it a quick, brief intro on just your name and your how many kids you had, and whatever you want to share about your homeschooling journey.
I always have to start at this end.
That's right.
My name's Margie Nan. We homeschooled 7 children. We have 8 grandchildren. We live on 4 acres outside of Weaver. And I just love having my grandchildren come over and start talking about the things that I used to talk about with my children as well.
Hi, I'm Natalie Kuntz, and I have 4 children. 2 are in college. Hallie is about ready to graduate from William Penn with a nursing degree, and Libby is finishing her 2nd year down at Culver Stockton, and she's going into accounting. And Aubrey is a senior, so she'll be going to SEC in the fall. So, and then Kale, sorry, last but not least, he's still at home, and I'm homeschooling him currently. I mean, not currently, he's actually done with his stuff for the year. So, but he has 2 more years of school, but my goal is always to kind of have them more on their own in high school, so I feel like I'm more done than I am.
I'm Laura Turner. I have 10 kids, and Essie graduated this past year, last year. So I'm still homeschooling all the others. The youngest is 4, so I'll be many more years. I was also homeschooled, so that I don't know if that helps a little bit. Starting in 8th grade on up. So I feel like I'm not a pioneer homeschool mom, but I was a pioneer homeschool child, I guess, because I remember. We can't go outside until 3 o'clock or whatever. So, I don't know.
It was weird.
Yeah, it was. It was different.
More for the students than the parents.
Yeah, so I can't think of anything else at the moment. But.
I'm Polly Mannering, and I live in Columbia, Missouri, and I have 8 children. 6 I've homeschooled everybody from beginning to end through high school. I have 6 that are finished. My daughter Lydia is just graduating her senior year, and then my daughter Jubilee is 15, and so she has a few years left. So most of them have, I guess I only have one son that, my oldest did not finish college, but my second son went on to get his PhD at Duke, and my daughter, my third one, is a nurse, and my son Simon, who lives here, is just finished his graduate degree as a physician's assistant, going to the University of Iowa, and my daughter Bethany is a SPED teacher, but she's expecting her first baby, so, and I have 8 grandchildren with 2 on the way, so.
Thank you for that. All right, so what is something that you regret doing or not doing with young kids in school?
I feel like we had playtime, but I think we should have had more playtime. And learning playtime, especially in the younger ages, and doing a lot more reading and visiting people in the community and that kind of thing. So I'd say that's my biggest regret. But they did well, so I don't want to say if you do other things that's not right, but I would have done it a little differently that way.
I feel like I spent a lot of worthless time on worksheets. Not meaning not to teach math, but just there was sometimes I was like, oh, we need to do some worksheets or a workbook. And I look back at it, I'm like, they learned nothing from those. But maybe your worksheets are better. But I wish I would have just read more books to them if that was even possible. Yeah, and more active learning playtime and field trips.
Yeah. One thing with my younger set of kids right now is I wish I would read to them more. I know my older kids, I read a lot. We would just always sit on the couch and read, probably because I was pregnant and needing to sit on the couch, so we'd read. And my younger kids, it's easier to say, hey, go have your older sister read to you or whatever. So I don't read as much to them, and I really wish I would, even to the big kids too. My mom would always read to us at lunchtime, and even when we were older. So I wish I would do more of just to sit and snuggle and read with them.
I guess things that I'm glad that we did was we did read a lot together as a family in the evenings or even in the afternoons. I am not, mess kind of makes me feel chaotic, but I really wish we would have had more messy art time Just even once a week. We did classical conversations one year, which was really changed my trajectory in my homeschool journey of just making, with my younger 3, 4, making more of a emphasis on art and learning about art. And so I guess that's one thing I wish I would have done more with my older kids, is just that play, art, fun, exploring type thing. And then also with my older kids, we did a lot of field trips. With my younger kids, I did not, and I wish we would have done that.
All right. I'm curious because I remember Kristen Durkee said the same thing, more art. And me personally, like I totally kind of, I feel like I can't squeeze another thing in, and the mess.
Yeah.
Oh, the mess. Like, no, thank you. But so why though? I'm curious to know why why you say that.
I think it's really, I think it just depends on maybe your approach to education, but I feel like incorporating the arts is really instrumental in getting a Christian worldview, and also just going along with history of what's happening, not only in history, but also in the music world and the art world. And and it's also, I think, really encouraging to the kids to see that they can do it, that it's not just out there somewhere, but they are able to draw or, we worked on some things with my older kids, but my younger kids, we really focused on a lot on art history and just doing some really fun things. And I don't know, I think it's just fun for all of us to kind of see that we, can do it, and even just laugh at some of the things we can't do.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. All right, so how do you balance keeping order and routine, yet also showing grace? And this is a two-part question. So also and also when the principal dad, if they're home as well, so balancing that.
Well, sometimes you incorporate dad into that, or dad just kind of does his thing and some of the kids would just go along with him, or just don't have a routine that day, or just do the very basics in math, or my husband drove a truck at one point. We would just ride along with him and we would just do reading, and then we do Legos and build those and stuff while he was in the truck. So there's creative ways that you're able to do those kind of things. And as far as routines, just do the best you can. You're not going to miss anything, so just try to have fun.
For me, just trying to balance that routine, I did a lot of chore checklists divided between the children, even when they were really little, and kind of rotated it, and so it was kind of chaotic to get it all set up, but then had them, check it all off before any screen time, or when my little girls were little, they didn't have as much screen time. Just wasn't a thing. And so
They probably wouldn't have cared anyway.
it just wasn't. Yeah. So, and just having that structure of, hey, this is something we all do together. And then when my husband was home, he was always, okay, let's just get everything cleaned up. And so just all of us would be working together as a family after supper. But it was hard not to be bothered with the mess, because there's just mess. Like when you're homeschooling, maybe one of you guys has the magic thing, but my house is just messier because I homeschool.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that I had to come to grips with the fact that my house was not going to be pristine because I was choosing to homeschool, and I could not do all of it well. Yes, we could clean, but it was not to the aspect of oh, my house was always clean, because when you're living, all 6 of you in a house, there was toys, there was Legos, there was always something scattered everywhere, and then you're eating 3 meals a day in your home, and hopefully your children are cooking, which just adds more mess. But I don't regret that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking too, you have to have lower expectations with everything. And don't expect to do everything, and don't expect your house to look like someone else's that doesn't homeschool. And I guess for us, my husband does live at home, or he lives at home. He works at home. He works at home all the time. He's at home all the time. And this, he quit had an engineering job. He quit that about 7 or 8 years ago. So he's been at home, which for me, it can add a little disruption, but not really. He actually did it because of me a little bit. I needed some help at home. And so in those tense moments or things are not going great, I can go upstairs to him and sit on his lap and calm down, or I can send a child up to him, which I've done, and is very helpful. And so also just my routine, I feel like, is more like we get school done, we get our meals done, I get laundry done, and the house gets cleaned up in the evening, kind of. And you just, however that works out in the day, it's going to work out. And because, I was going to mention too, because my husband's at home, he's more of a late riser. So our schedule is shifted a couple hours than most people. So, most of the family doesn't get up till about 8. And so breakfast is a little later, which kind of drives me crazy sometimes, but I'm learning to just say, okay, we're getting everything done. We're just about 2 or 3 hours off of everybody's normal schedule, which works out fine until you have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock. And then it's like, oh, we just ate breakfast, Mom, about 30 minutes ago. I'm not ready for my lunch, which is okay. So I don't know. I found it a blessing to have my husband at home, although he may be getting a job. We don't know. So he may not be at home, which is hard, and it can create some interesting things, but it's been helpful. And just don't expect your life to run like anybody else's.
I guess about routine, I think the biggest thing that was a help, my husband worked outside the home, and he's an engineer, so very orderly, and I think I was in the midst of having a lot of young children, homeschooling them all at once, and just feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and he really encouraged me to make a schedule, and that was transformative in my life and in my organization the schedule can be nixed for the day, which we would do that occasionally. We would have, my older kids would probably remember, we just do I would surprise them with just a homeschool day off day, and we just go do fun stuff. But I think just in my homeschool journey, I think the biggest thing to help my kids and myself is to have a schedule and to try to follow that as much as you can. Children really thrive with routine, with schedule, as we all do. If you were at a job, you wouldn't just show up to work when you wanted to. There's a time that you have to be there. And so I think for me, and for my kids, if we took a few weeks off around Christmas time, they would say, can we get back to school now? Because it was just, was enough. They had enough downtime, and they liked the schedule and the orderliness about their day. And so I guess, trying to stick to a schedule as much as you can, I think, at least for me and my kids, has been helpful. And also just a chore chart has also been very helpful. I had to learn as a young mom that I could not go back and sweep the floor again, that had to be acceptable, and that was good for me. But to accept what they're doing, because that's how they're learning. And so, I guess that would be the biggest thing of routine, is keep the routine as much as you can.
Yeah. All right. So one of the repeated themes I felt was throughout these questions that were put in was really just about how you balance it all, and I was just talking to Olivia about this, because we're wives, we're homemakers, cooks, housekeepers, we serve outside the home, we have extended family, we want to be in the community, we discipline, we're discipling kids and maintaining friendships, and so many things on top of educating our kids and homeschooling. And so there's no, we're not looking at pictures. So there's like this, how do we do it all? How do we balance it all? And I know the Lord gives us exactly the time we need in the day, in each day, and we can trust in that. And so, but there are days where, I'm sure you felt that. You just like, I can't do all, or you just feel so overwhelmed. And so what did you do to combat that? Or maybe how did you prioritize things? Or, what did balancing it all look like for you?
I made a list of what would my priorities be, and my home probably wasn't one of them. So we would just do the very, very basics so that it wouldn't drive me crazy. And all of a sudden I'd wake up one day and say, okay, I'm done with this. We would completely clean the house to my satisfaction. And the kids would say, who's coming over? Like, no, we live here, so let's just kind of get it together. So I just kind of let it go because we lived in it. We created a lot of our messes in the summertime. That's when we would do more Play-Doh, more art activities, more let's learn how to decorate cakes. And I didn't care if the house got dirty because we weren't schooling. We'd have time to clean up and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of how we did it, and always start my morning with prayer, and my devotions on that seemed to make things go better. When I didn't do that, I could really tell the difference in my attitude towards my kids. And they needed to do the same. And when they got older, they had a list of things they had to get done during the day. If they got it done by 10 o'clock, that was their free time. If it took them till 3 o'clock, well, that's kind of on you. So that's kind of how we did part of that.
I just had to be really careful with my commitments when the kids were little, because my husband farmed full-time starting in 2009, and so he needed me to bring meals to the field in the spring and the fall. And so for one, we just didn't start sports until Hallie was like in 6th grade. Which was super shocking. And even then, when we had like boundaries in that, such as our children did not do, when I announced to the coaches that our kids were not going to do the traveling tournaments, our children were the only ones out of all 3 grades that did not do traveling tournaments. But my husband was really helpful in guarding our time and saying, hey, we need to back off and we need to guard our time, and just realizing that it's a season of life.
I know when my kids were all little, we didn't do much. It was basically school and life. And I think, so my big kids didn't experience a lot of extra things, but now that I have my helpers, we do more. And that has really helped. I think that kept my sanity. Now I don't have any because we're busy. And then there was something else I was trying to think. I know this past November when my husband fell off the ladder and broke his foot. One thing that has helped me is he always did our grocery shopping. So when he broke his heel and had surgery and can drive, I had to do the grocery shopping, and that added on an extra thing. And I started feeling overwhelmed. It's like I have homeschool, I have church things. Now I have to do all the errands or drive you places if he needed to go somewhere, to the doctor and everything. And that was overwhelming. And then there were just times when I can't do it all. But, cry in the shower. That's really good. It happened a lot. To kind of just calm down and ask the Lord to help you. Mm-hmm. But really, sometimes it is saying no to things, and also just realizing what's important for your family. And the Lord will help you get it through. I got the grocery shopping done, and now he can drive. He can do it.
I guess I think one thing is not to play the comparison game. Yeah. That you have to figure out what works for your family and what's good for your kids. And so I think it's really easy to feel like you have to do it all. But I think the biggest thing, I have several sister-in-laws that homeschooled and sisters that homeschooled, and I'm the youngest in my family and probably my husband's family as well. But anyway, a sister-in-law said to me who has older kids, she said, stay home. And I think that's too really key of just, you are homeschooling, and so that's your priority. And, your job is to get them, depending on if you're homeschooling through high school, that's your responsibility as a mom and a dad, is you've committed yourself to this. And it is a commitment. It's a huge commitment. It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of maybe saying no. And I guess I have younger friends that are now homeschooling, and that's why I try to, you do not have to do everything. All these activities are good, and they look really good, and they may be fun and educational, but you really have to step back and say, do I have time for this? Is this really good for all of my kids? And so, I guess, just learning to say no and just really looking at your own family and not to play the comparison homeschool game. I think that's easy to do. Especially as homeschooling gets more popular, and you younger moms have so many more resources even with my younger kids, I have a lot more opportunities than I did with my older kids, which makes it actually more difficult. It was easier with my older ones because we just didn't have all the options that are out there now. And so, just really prioritize, your family comes first, and you really have to guard that. It's really easy to let things come in and something may look good, but it really may not be a good fit for your family. So just be discerning and prayerful.
That's a good reminder. All right, so what is one piece of advice you would give a new mom homeschooling?
I would just say love your children. Pray for them on a daily basis, pray together, and whatever curriculum you choose, you don't have to stick to it. You be the guide of the curriculum. It says you do pages 4 through 6 today, big deal. What if you only get one page done? What if you don't need those pages? So just use that as a basis and then just make it your own.
Yeah, I would say chill out. And they're going to be fine. And on those days where you don't feel like homeschooling, I would grab the kids and get some markers and art and sit and listen to an audiobook because honestly, I got feedback from my 3 girls and then my son-in-law-to-be and his brother. They were all homeschooled, and I didn't think about it until like 45 minutes ago. But I texted them and said, what would you tell a homeschooling mom? All 5 of them are very successful in college. And so what would you tell them? What helps for college? What helps for an adult? And so it was interesting. One of the all things that they said was all the literature that Robin and I put a priority on. Which at times my husband was like, why are you reading all these books? Because the book learning was a little bit excessive at our house. But sometimes I just was like, all I want to do is read. And we read a lot of classics, and all 5 of them would agree that all that literature actually helped them for writing and just learning in college.
I was going to say, don't compare yourself. So you said it very well earlier. I can clearly remember once we had a rough day in school, and our school day went really long. And I was switching some laundry. I happened to look out the window, and I see a neighbor of mine driving down the road. She had just started homeschooling that year, and I was like, oh, she probably finished her school at noon and went to the grocery store and did everything, and I'm having this little pity party. And then we were talking later, and she said that same day as she drove by my house, she was thinking, oh, Laura probably had a great day at school. They had a bad day. And so don't compare yourself, because the other person's probably having a bad day too. And also just when you have a bad day, we have this frequently just with bad attitudes. It's just, I'm learning to calm down and give hugs to my kids. And one little thing I'm learning, I don't know if it has anything to do with this, but with my little kids, some of them can be hard and can be a little bit loud and can disrupt everything. So as they're kind of heating up, and I feel myself heating up, is to say, you need a hug, and just come to me. And that really helps me. I can't tell you how much it helps, because I would be ready to lash out at them, but just like give them a hug. And a lot of times one of them particularly will say, I'm so sorry, Mommy. And he's so repentant. So just give your kids hugs. They need them, and so do you, because then I stop and we give a hug and we calm down and deal with the situation. Yeah, so on bad days, just give hugs, just repent if it's your fault, which a lot of times it was mine. You know, just say, I'm sorry, we're going to try again tomorrow. Don't give up. I tell my sister that a lot, although it's very easy to. It's like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I say that frequently. And then, do you cry in the shower? I've done that many times. That's how Jen and I kind of clicked. It's like when my kids were young, by the end of the day, that's what I did. I get in the shower, I calm down, I was by myself, and I just cry and pray. I mean, that's what I was doing. And then start again the next day.
I guess the biggest thing is to, you can't nurture and feed your children, spiritually, if you're not taking care of your own relationship with the Lord. And so I think that's, it's really easy to let that fall by the wayside. But I think, that's should be our priority of just feeding our children, not only with education, but, we really want them we want to shape and encourage them toward a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so, the way that we can do that is by knowing Christ ourselves and spending time with Him and knowing His Word. Because if we're not doing His Word, and what I want to say, trial ground, I don't know, with our children, homeschooling, they see our sin, we see their sin, and so, I think as being humble, being willing to say to your kids, I am sorry, I sinned against you, I was angry, I was unkind, and them needing to see that you're a sinner in need of God's grace, and so that they also would see that. And then just, trying to encourage them to, like we've, obviously, in our family, we had sibling rivalry or disputes. Maybe none of you have that, but, that they would, they would come to me and want to tattletale. And, just kind of following that Matthew 18 of, have you talked to your brother about this? Trying to follow those things. Have you gone to them and said, or can you just cover it? Can you just let it go? And so I think all those little things of training them up really in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, especially with taking care of yourself. And I think taking care of yourself spiritually is really important, and also physically. Moms, especially when you have little ones, it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. You're in the heat and run of the day. You're in the summer season of your life, and that is physically challenging. And so just really making sure that you're eating well, that you're resting well. And I mean, that maybe sounds silly, but I think moms, we can kind of, we're moms, we kind of, moms don't get sick, moms, but take care of yourself, and especially, this may not be popular what I'm going to say, but your season of life right now is your family, is your children, and I think it's really easy to look at the world around us and, kind of, friends are important, but in a sense that there's a season for that. And I think for women, we like to be social and relational, and so, be wise about the friends that you choose. Make sure that they're encouraging you in what you're doing, but also, just remembering that your priority is your husband, is your family, is your children. And that time for you to be that older woman to pour into younger women's lives will come, and friendships will come, and letting the Lord bring those to you. So, I think sometimes that gets lonely, but, if you have a few good friends, that's just, that to be wise in your friendships, I think, too. So, I don't know if I answered the question or not, but.
That's good.
All very helpful.
Okay, all right. You want to tell me a joke? Sorry. All right, so.
I was like, what was it?
It was a 3-year-old that came up with it, so it didn't quite make sense to me. But anyway, so, all right, so I had a different question, but you mentioned the sibling squabbles, so maybe we'll just keep going with that. So you mentioned Matthew 18 as a guide, how else did you guys handle the sibling squabbles?
Start on that in this.
I guess just really trying to encourage them, treating each other how you would want to be treated, asking forgiveness, and, sometimes, I don't know that it's, I had 2 of my children were like oil and water. They just didn't, they were close in age, and they just were always, personality-wise, just always butting heads, and that was hard. It was very hard, but I think just, having them go to each other and saying, because I think it's really easy for kids to use mom or to use dad, and trying to get them to really battle out their differences in a, did you talk to them that, you were being unkind to me, you hurt my feelings. And then if they don't apologize, then come to mom and dad. But just learning how to work out those conflicts themselves, I think was helpful to our family. So sibling squabbles are hard.
Very hard.
We're still in the midst of that, and I still have those a lot, so I'm learning myself. But one thing I've noticed recently is a child will come to me and say, he hit me, or he did this, and I'll say, okay, what did you do to provoke them? And there's usually silence, and they won't tell me. So, that's kind of, it's usually a two-sided thing, and trying to help them see, you did something that made this person upset with you, and yes, they were wrong to hit, they were wrong to do whatever, but what was your offense too? I've been trying to kind of focus on that some, and when they were little, sometimes I'll remember, hey, give each other a hug, and that just kind of, they'll laugh and, give a hug, and that'll kind of smooth things over if it's not too big of an offense, but it's still a big thing in our house. We're learning.
I would say definitely wait until they calm down.
Yeah.
Never try to talk to a child when they are hyped up. Number one, they can't function. Their brain is way out in left field. It only makes it worse, and a lot of times things get said that doesn't need to be said if you just give them time to calm down. Same with us. But also watch for the children that tend to be a little bit more in charge, that they're not. I wish I would have been a little bit more involved in just a couple of my children's dynamics growing up, because one of them kind of asserted her, like, I can get what I want, just by being older, and so therefore there was a little bit more manipulation going on, that things got settled. But what I didn't realize was things got settled because the other one was scared of her. And so that part, I wish I would have gotten a little bit, I wish I would have listened a little bit more to the one that was a little bit more passive. I also think it's important now, I'm trying to get them to really go through conflict resolution as far as like saying what the hurt is. If somebody does something hurtful, or if it's a repetitive hurt, having that child or getting Chad and I involved in saying, this is happening on a regular basis. This is very hurtful for this child. If that child can express it, that they can say, it makes me feel this, I am feeling this. Not that blaming the other person, that's not what I mean. But basically saying how hurtful it is. To give that child a chance to be compassionate when they're not heated, and then to say, I am really sorry, and to kind of move through that. And so now that my children are more into adults, and of course they don't argue or fight anymore, but I just am noticing I'm needing more expertise in how I deal with it. And because as they're older, I want them to be close as adults, so they have, such a strong bond with being homeschooled. But we're sinners, and we need to show grace, but making sure that one of them or two of them are not like letting things go because they don't want to rile the other one up. I wish I would have been more aware of that when they were younger, and now I am. And so sometimes Chad and I will step in and be like, hey, this needs to be resolved. And then, talking about forgiveness and just working through that, what it needs to look like biblically. But just kind of taking that counselor status and realizing if there's something unhealthy creeping in, realizing that you are the parent and you want them to have those healthier relationships as they're adults.
It's hard to stay on top of it all the time, but we try to do the best we can. And sometimes it's overlooking an offense, a smaller offense. And we have to determine should I really take care of this, or is it just like a little sibling squabble they're going to work out on their own? But it's difficult sometimes, and you don't want them to say, oh, I'm sorry. Well, they don't know what they're sorry for. Yeah. Okay, you're really sorry. What did you do? Why are you sorry? How did that grieve your sibling? How does that grieve the Lord? How does that affect me? How does that affect our family relationships? And try to have them work it out. And if they can't, then go to your rooms till you can calm down. You can think through it clearly. And then one of them will come out and say, okay, this is exactly what happened. And I'm really sorry that I did this. I should have done this. So one of the things with our little bit older kids was, how could you have handled this differently? You may have been offended, but why did you go push them? What could you have done differently, and try to get them to try to work it out. So when my kids are older in high school and I would offend them, they'd say, Mom, how could you have handled that differently? I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I should have, blah, blah, blah. Well, I forgive you, So at least I knew they were learning at that point.
You know what, there is something, is getting them to understand also as they go older that all of us are going to struggle with certain beliefs that are wrong, whether like I'm not enough, or I should be doing this, or I'm not measuring up, or whatever that is, and realizing that all your kids are going to deal with a certain aspect of that differently, and then watching for them to look at the other sibling and being like, I'm not enough for you. Well, in actuality, they're feeling like they're not enough to start with. And so taking ownership of that, okay, I need to deal with, that's like between me and Jesus. If I'm not feeling like I'm enough and I'm feeling like everybody, I feel like I'm not enough because of my siblings doing this and my parents doing this. And so a lot of that blaming for issues where it's like, that's between you and the Lord. Nobody's going to make you feel like you're enough. And so just getting them to understand that I'm struggling making that clear. But basically, understanding where that nobody can make you feel a certain way, and taking responsibility for that as they get older as well.
I'm going to add something. As my kids have gotten older, there's, just dynamics of personalities, but also sometimes they really need help talking through a problem that they're having with each other. And so, being a mediator of just, kind of being in the room and helping them discuss, helping them talk, I think is helpful. And then also just, I've tried to tell my kids more lately, if someone's coming to you, maybe not in the right spirit, but, your dad or your mom or your brother or your sister, they love you, and they may not, trying to give the benefit of the doubt of they're saying something to you, they may not say it in the right way, but instead of getting angry, is to step back and say, for them to say that to me was not easy for them, even if it wasn't said in the right way. And just say, is there any truth to what they're saying? To kind of more examine yourself instead of just lashing back and pointing the finger, well, they did this to me. Okay, well, my sister said this to me. Is there any truth to what she's saying to me? And if there is, then ask forgiveness for that, and that's something you need to work on with the Lord. But also, if there's not, then let it go. Just let it go, and not to take things so personally, of just because they're going to run into people all throughout their life that no matter where they are, that and just to examine yourself. Is there any truth to this? No. Okay. Well, then don't let it ruin your day. Go on and so. But I think too, just being, especially with teenagers, I think sometimes they need help. Kind of needing a mom or dad there just to be a mediator of just, so it just doesn't become escalated, but to bring some peace, and let's talk through this in a peaceful way. We do have a difference here. There's some conflict, and so let's see how we can walk through this. And I think it's been helpful to do that, because now they're able to, I can see them doing that now themselves. So.
And one aspect of that too is not playing like the blame game. Well, I reacted this way because you did something else. Well, they're responsible for their behavior. I'm responsible for mine. So let's figure out where we both went wrong and try to resolve that conflict. So.
So true.
I gotta write all that down. That was really, that was very helpful. So I'm curious to know, did any of you guys have kiddos who struggled with reading fluently, or were late readers, or just reading was a struggle?
Yeah, we had a couple that we consider late bloomers. You just keep working with them and working with them. Eventually they get it, but you don't want to make them feel like, well, I'm 5 years old and I can't read yet, or I'm 8 years old and I don't read it, such and such a level or whatever, not to make them feel bad, but just keep working at it and working at it, finding a different phonics program, just keep reading, and eventually it all works itself out.
It's really hard. It just is. Because I feel like as a homeschool mom, you're like, if I can't teach them to read, what am I doing? So my first one started reading at 4.5, and then Libby, my second one, was age 7. I am never gonna learn how to read. I hate reading. I can't read. I will not read. And I remember thinking, what are we going to do? Like, if she never, and so I said, well, how about we do spelling? Oh, yeah, I like spelling. And then I would just read her lots of books, and then gradually she came out of it. But when you're in it, it's really hard, because some of them just get a block that I can't do this. And then I just have one that struggles with reading comprehension more than the other ones. There's just some that are gonna struggle with reading comprehension. There's some that aren't gonna ever be that amazing reader just because of how their brain works. And so just realizing that all of them are created differently and all of them are gonna have different gifts, but just persevering with that. But if you do have that, it's really hard. I remember my mother-in-law would totally panic, like, oh no, I think she wanted me to send her to public school.
I have a couple of my middle ones that don't read really strongly, but I think it's more my fault actually, is it takes time to spend with them. And when you have your big kids that need help and you have your little kids that need help, and then you're trying to sit and help somebody learn to read and practice reading, and that's the one thing that falls by the wayside for me. So I know I need to be a little more focused. One of my sons, he's 9 now, but last year when he was in 3rd grade, I think, he was a slow reader, but it just kind of suddenly clicked for him too. So I think sometimes just give him time. Mm-hmm. Just keep working with him, be patient, and give him time. And now she just turned 8. So my 8-year-old now, she's kind of struggling. But I do feel like most of it is a little bit my fault. But now I know I need to really work with her on reading. But I do think there is a block with her a little bit. She's not getting things quite as quickly, but she's also very impatient with herself. So it's easier when I see her struggling, then I'll just read the word for her. It's like, no, I can't do that. That's not going to help her. So learning each other's yours and their way they learn and how you teach also will help. But they will learn to read eventually. Just give them time.
They do.
I guess I would say, again, don't play the homeschool comparison game even within your own kids. All of your children are different, and they all grasp things at different stages just because of how their brain works. And so, as again, all these moms have said, be patient. Also get help. If your child's really struggling, get help, or ask one of the older moms that maybe that all the kids are gotten out of the house, and sometimes it is you just don't have time to work with that child. Ask for some help. I'm sure there's an older woman that would love to come alongside and spend some time helping that child. They would come into the house, and so don't be too proud to ask for help. And sometimes even just that different relationship, that it's not mom, can be helpful for that child. Sometimes they can perform a little bit differently because it's not mom, and mom is familiar, and mom is gonna, let it go. And so, get help. If they need help, get their eyes checked. I mean, just little things like that you think, but also just be patient. They're just all different personalities. I had a son who, this is not with reading, but with math, who just his personality, I mean, I could explain it, but if he could not understand it, and he would just put his head down on the desk and cry, like in 5th or 6th grade, because he had to understand every jot and tittle. And once he did it, he was there. And I had to be patient with him. And once he got over that hump, it was good until we hit another hump. But it's just how he worked. He was very, just different than my older 2 sons. And so, anyway, so just, they're all different, but ask for help, I wish I would have asked for help a lot more when I was a mom with lots of kids. For a short time, I had a pastor's wife who was a teacher who did not have any children, I had one of my younger sons really struggled with reading, and she would come in and help him, and I could tell it was different. I wasn't mom. and she had a different touch, and it was helpful. So it's okay to ask for help.
Even among your children, ask for help. I mean, some of my older kids have, last year I had one of my older ones, because she got up early, got her school done pretty early, so she had time. So I said, okay, can you just review the alphabet with the younger two and do that? And that was good for both of them. It helped, and this child in particular, my older child, I don't know if she has dyslexia, but there's just some things, that are a little flipped sometimes. So just the review of the phonics sounds actually helped her too. And that gave them a time to work together, build sibling relationships. And that was super helpful too. So anytime you can have an older child help too, lightens the load. And even like a child might work better with another adult, sometimes another sibling works better. I mean, some of my older kids are much better with my younger ones in teaching them than I am. So, just call on your resources in your home too.
And good set of flashcards that have the letter with like an animal on it, so they can associate, whether it's C, cat, or sea celery, and just start really, really young. As soon as they're and just start going over them every single day. They're not going to pick it up right away, but when they are 5 or 6, then you've already been going over it for a year or two, and that just automatically goes into their brain. And so they might be a slow reader, but Libby knew all of her phonics. So she was really threatened by reading, but I said, let's do spelling, and she could, she was like, oh yeah, I'll do spelling because of all those phonic flashcards. So she didn't have to look at a word and be like, I don't remember the sound of that, because I always did the flashcards. So I feel like that didn't necessarily help her be a good reader, but when she was ready, she wasn't like, oh, how do these certain letters go?
All right, so what is one subject you wish you spent more time on? And we can, I know we kind of adjust that with, or something you wish you wouldn't have, or maybe your kids were like, this was pointless, like, I don't know why we, or looking back, maybe they would say, I really didn't need that. Or you look back and say, they really didn't need that. But yet I felt pressure to, because maybe, someone else was.
Well, in our family, I'd say algebra, because my kids, even the ones that were more academic, would say, this is really stupid, I'm never going to use this. And I'm like, well, somebody says you need to. I wish we would have just not done it. Instead of fighting with them, we got a tutor, to help out. But one thing I wish we would have really concentrated on was English and the proper ways to use different words, because they're going to use that forever. But that one was a battle, and it was a struggle, and I'm like, okay, just do the basics and let's get it done. And I wished I would have pushed a little harder, because they're going to use that forever on every application, everything that they use. So that was our downfall.
I really struggled with writing. Really, really struggled teaching them writing. And so when they went to college, my older one said, I wish you would have taught us some more writing. Yeah, I wish I would have too. And so, but because we had done so much literature, they were natural writers. I don't know what they were complaining about. Don't tell them I said that. But Aubrey started college classes this year, and she's my senior, and she just wasn't quite ready beforehand. And so she started college classes, and she's like, I don't know how to write. Why didn't you teach me this more? And then Kale looks at me. I love it. He's like, Mom, I don't know how to write. And I'm like, then write something. I don't know. You'll figure it out in college. But that was just something I really struggled with. But I remember going to homeschool conference and the moms being like, hey guys, if you do a lot of books and you do a lot of audiobooks and you do a lot of reading to your kids, there's a lot of stuff that's just going to naturally follow. And so I love to read, so I was like, oh, this is great. So that was kind of like my get out of jail free card, was we just did an excessive amount of reading, whether it was reading at night, whether it was when we were in the car doing audiobooks, and they just really became avid readers. Or I would say my son Kale is not an avid reader, he's an avid listener. So he does a lot of audiobooks. And so that is something I wish I would have done different. When I ask the kids about that, they were all like, as I said, literature. They were just so grateful for all that time. And I remember a homeschooling mom telling me one time, when my kids went to college, the professor said, you read to your kids. I can tell you read to your kids. And that really stuck with me. And now I see I didn't spend much time teaching them writing. Very, very little. And yet, I look at their papers and I'm like, how did you know how to write that? But it's all that literature and all that reading just naturally brings that forward. So, yeah, just be glad that you have strength in some areas and it'll even out.
Writing is something we struggle with because I struggle with it. Math is one thing I wish I would spend more time teaching more. I feel like because they have so many, I'm trying to teach and still have little ones I'm trying to teach, that my non-readers, that it's more like, okay, read your math book and go figure it out. But I know Essie was saying, I wish I had more instruction in my math, and she's great with math, so it was kind of funny that she said that, like, oh, you're better at math than I am. I just wish I would spend more time, kind of 15 minutes, just read the lesson with them and make sure they understand, because my fourth grader, I can tell, kind of like yours, he struggles until he gets it, but I think he has it, and then I realize he doesn't understand. But back to the writing, because that's one thing we don't do much of. But I was talking to my sister this morning, and my oldest daughter Essie has been emailing her, and she said, Laura, she's a great writer. I'm like, oh, thank you. I didn't know that. And I don't read Essie's emails, and that's just letter writing. But still, she can communicate her thoughts, and that's important. I had no idea that was good, and she said, no, she's a great writer. You did a good job. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know what I did.
So as to, the question was, what do you read? Maybe
A subject you wish you may have spent more time on, or something
you regret doing?
that you're glad you spent the time on,
Okay.
something, there you go, that you wish you'd done, or something you're glad you did. So either way, like something, things are.
I guess I'm glad that we did, our curriculum that we use is very literature-based, and I'm glad that we used that, and we did read a lot of books, and so I feel like my kids had a good foundation there. Also, we spent, I guess, just spending time. I don't feel like there's anything I regret doing. I guess I just wish we would have spent, we tried to really spend a lot of time on the basics. I think what's hard is when they get to high school, and like math, I only go to a certain point in math. And my husband's an engineer, and the kids say that he explains it a little bit over their heads. And so I guess maybe just teaching myself a little bit more so I could help the kids a little bit more in high school. Thankfully, older kids are great at helping my younger kids, so that's been helpful. But I think I guess too, just that I'm kind of a classical educator. We did Latin, and so I guess just I wish I would have integrated more the arts and music and some of those extra things with my older kids. I've done that with my younger kids, and I feel like it's been just a more rounded education for them. So
And you use sunlight, is that right?
I do.
As your, yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
I use sunlight.
Yeah, okay.
I did not, when I was teaching all the kids together, we would do history together, so I wouldn't use Sunlight's history. So I could do everybody together on the history, just so I didn't have to be teaching so many different ones, because my kids were close together and I was doing a lot of, wanted to get more bang for my buck, so to speak. My time, bang for my time.
Yeah. All right, so what encouragement do you give yourself when you were questioning if you're doing the right thing by homeschooling?
Call a friend and cry.
Truth.
I would say if you've actually prayed about this decision, because it is a huge decision for your family, and you've talked to your husband about it, if you feel like you're stuck and want to give up, talk to your husband about it, talk to a friend, examine your reasons why. Do you think God is actually changing your mind? Or are you just frustrated because you feel like your kids aren't getting something, or you need to be somewhere else? So try to discuss that with your husband and figure out why you're feeling that way, and then just keep going until God changes the direction of your family.
Yeah, there's just going to be days that it is just really hard. And whether it's just hormones, whether it's hormones for them, or all together. But just, I feel like when my son reached kind of that, he was, maybe 13, yeah. Oh, yay. There were just times that he would get really frustrated at something, and I just got really good at walking away. And just, and then just giving time for his heart to soften, and for him to come back and be like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to lose my cool over this. It's just that it's a boy thing. So once you get to that age, just having your mom be your teacher is hard. It just is. And then just getting my husband involved when necessary. I felt like when he first started, that just like, oh, this is really hard. My husband had to be involved more. Now he is going to be 15 in August, and I feel like he's gotten to know more himself of, hey, this is just going to be hard, and yet I still need to own it. So Chad hasn't been as involved with that, which I'm thankful that's the Holy Spirit.
I don't know if I really have any encouragement I give myself. I just keep going, which is hard. I know sometimes if I'm looking at the kids' schoolwork and I think I'm failing because they're learning nothing, it appears, and then it's the time to say, okay, what do I need to change? Do I need to change our structure? Do I need to change our curriculum? Do I need to change the way I'm teaching? Does this child, like for a while, one of mine, because we have so many, we're trying to work in our house, we kind of all work at the same table. One of them went upstairs to work for a while. Well, his math could take all day, like 4 or 5 hours, and still not be done. Because he was working where it was quiet, but he still got distracted. And I'd say, no, you've got to come down here. Because also, I don't even know what you're doing. He's the one I need to spend more instruction time with. So, kind of making changes too. For me, if there's a frustration, that means I got to fix something. I got to figure out what it is. A lot of times I'm just ready to go, oh, we're just going to change it all. Yeah. Thankfully, I don't. And I just calm down and figure out what needs to be changed. But I know there was a talk recently, I forget who spoke, but about sending your kids to school or something. And that day or that week, I had threatened the children, I am sending you to school, I am done. And that talk was very encouraging, just more like, do you really want to? Do you know what's out there? And realize what you have here at home is the opportunity to train them, not only in their schoolwork, but in life and in the Lord. And even my response is teaching them. So when I threaten them, I'm sending you to school, well, that's not kind. And I always know in the back of my mind, that's never going to happen because I can't get you out the house in time. So that just won't work. So really, I guess for us, sending them to school is not an option because they would always be late. So, yeah. But it's a struggle, and you just have to pray and cry and try again. You know, you always have the next day, hopefully. So.
I think one thing is to listen to your husband. Even, like I said, my husband works outside the home and busy, but, and sometimes I didn't want his advice, but he was able to, because he had a more, what I want to say, he was able to have a little bit more out, you know, a longer vision, so to speak, than I did. And so when he, you know, point of pride here, when I was like having meltdown of, you know, I can't do this, you know, everything's chaotic. And he said, you know, I think if you got a schedule, and my husband's very scheduled, but it was really transformative in my homeschool journey. And so, you know, listen to your husband, and also to, you know, veteran homeschoolers, or, you know, have a good friend that you can call and say, you know, pray for me right now. Because you do have bad days. Your kids have bad days. You know, we all know what that's like. And also, go to the park. You know, pack a picnic, call a friend, say, meet me at the park, or something like that. But, you know, just realize you are going to have those bad days, and don't let them define your whole journey. You know, you can't do that. So I think just go to the library. You know, just even getting out of the house for an hour or two can really change your perspective. You know, I think too, just, I have older kids, but, you know, it's really such a blessing when they come and say, Mom, thanks for homeschooling me. You know, that was a lot of sacrifice, and thanks for doing that. Or they see, you know, other kids and they're like, I am so glad I'm not in that scene. I'm so glad that I'm being homeschooled. And so, you know, it's hard to keep that, you know, I struggle with just not seeing past the end of my nose, but it's really hard to keep that longer perspective of what you're doing. You're running a marathon, and that takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of pain and sweat, and it's not easy, but it sure is rewarding when, you know, you have just those good days. So.
Yeah. I feel like the Lord brings encouragement sometimes, just like the good day, or like a child says something, it's like, wow, you learned that, or that came out of your mouth, wow, you're really smart. I mean, even just the wisdom of the Lord kind of things. And so the Lord will bring encouragement. He's so good at encouraging us in our downtime if we'll stop and listen, and not keep getting upset. But I have turned in my resignation, or threatened to turn in my resignation papers, and my principal will just laugh at me. So, doesn't work.
And I echo listening to your husband. I remember the day my husband came to me and he said, you know, this English you're using? He didn't even know what English I was using. He's like, this has been a real struggle. Well, I am saying that we are getting new English. And I'm like, I have all the English already bought. And he's like, I don't care. Buy something else. He said, this is causing stress for you. This is causing stress for the kids. And he said, he looked at it and he said, yeah, none of this stuff do they actually need to know anyway. So he said, you need to get something that's more conducive to what you're teaching. But it was humiliating, being like, ugh. And then just really, it was my pride, and just being humble and being like, you know what, he might not be there in the day of today, but when thankfully God gave my husband the wisdom, and my kids were so grateful that we switched out of that English curriculum.
What was it?
Rod and Staff.
Okay, I wondered.
It was great in the younger years.
Yeah.
As soon as they got to high school and like 10th,
Yeah. I've heard it's good, but
The younger years.
Yeah,
Younger
the younger
years are
years.
amazing.
Okay.
It was once we got to high school, he was like, this is not working.
What'd you switch to?
Fix it grammar.
IEW? Yeah, Institute for Excellence in Writing.
They
Yeah.
just like it so much more.
Yeah,
And they think they need more writing,
yeah.
which they do.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, maybe I should switch to IEW. And now you did that, and your kids are still like, Mom, we didn't do enough writing.
Well, yeah, I
But
need to do more IEW.
yeah, I guess I don't even know what that would look like. Like what? So I was thinking that like when you say they like English or writing, like there's so many elements of writing, so like what in particular writing, more narrative stories, more 5-paragraph essays.
Yes.
Or yes.
Yeah,
stuff
the essays
like-
for college
The
is what I would
essays for
say.
college
Essays,
is
Skip
what
the
they were-
poems.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything, really. I mean,
Yeah.
you can read some and they'd be
Unless you're
fine,
gonna
but this.
memorize them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so more essays, all right. All right, so, and you mentioned, Laura, was it Susan's talk on
think it was,
homeschool
yeah.
apologetics?
I think so.
That,
Yeah,
yeah,
yes, it was, I was humbled.
yeah, I took notes on that because I wanted to mention that. So if you guys haven't seen that, you can find that in the Facebook group, a Facebook page, our home group of Susan Gers talked about homeschool apologetics, and it was one of the best talks
was
ever.
really good.
Especially even if you just fast forward to the very end, just where she just kind of flies off the cuff.
That was
it
very
was.
helpful.
I remember tearing up. It was very helpful too. So, all right, how do you handle everyone needing you at once?
First. It's hard. You go.
It is very hard because they raise their voices and they need your attention. And I would just say, okay, wait, one at a time. And they'd all start talking again. So I'd usually start with the youngest one and say, until I got to the oldest one, we'd figure it out. And they'd say, well, that isn't how it happened, or I need you first, or whatever. You just have to say, okay, I'm just one person. I will get to you. We'll do what we can. Maybe you could help each other out. And so, every day was a new day, but I found that if I kept my cool and just kept a normal tone of voice, they lowered theirs, and it was more normal than if I would raise my voice, then they would increasingly raise their voices and try to talk over each other, so.
And then when they got to the age where it was like, okay, they actually really do need my help with certain areas and I can't be distracted, then I would just put them in sort of a block scheduling. Okay, they do not need me at this, so this is when I'm going to help this child. And they do not need me for this, and this is when I'm going to help this child. And then I just kind of blocked it out, and I was like, and this child gets my time here, and then this child gets my time here. So that's, honestly, it got to be the worst with my last two. Because they were like, you're always helping him, and it's like, really? So then just putting them on opposite, or if you have 4, putting them on things where they don't need you. And then my mom actually, we're thinking of that extra tip just made me think of it. This is super random, but my mom homeschooled me, and she gave me the tip of saying when the phone rings and there's something totally random and it's a phone call that you have to take and the one that you can't wait, she said make sure you have something scheduled that you can give to all of them that doesn't require you, whether it's a creative writing or something. So if all of a sudden you get something and you're helping, a group of children or something, that you can automatically say, okay, it's time for this, and then take the phone. So she said just planning for that. So yeah, that phone call isn't necessarily another child, but just making time for that extra little interruption that you have planned for, she said was wonderful, because she homeschooled 5 of us.
I thought it was funny when I read the question, because Olivia had asked me if I had any questions, and I hadn't been able to send her any, but that wasn't a question of mine. It was like, so I read the question, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good question. I need to know. And I could feel the emotions and the tension of having several people need you at once, because it happens every day. one thing I've done, I haven't done it consistently, but it worked okay for a week, I think, was 15 minutes, kind of like, I'm going to work with you for 15 minutes, and I'm going on to the next person, and the next person is kind of go around the table, get them started so they know what they can do. Most of them can work by themselves. My little non-readers, they need help. One thing I do is I sit in between my first grader and my second grader, and then my preschooler is on the other side of the table. She can be a challenge. She does her little preschool book. She's not really in school, but she wants to be. So it's more like finding something she can do in her little preschool book that doesn't need much help, and she'll be happy. But then she wants to do another page, and it's like, hold on, I can't get to you right now. But if I sit in between my two that need more help, then I can kind of focus. I can help two at a time, kind of, as long as one's doing math or they're both doing math together or something where it doesn't need a lot of attention. I can't do someone's phonics and someone's English at the same time because she needs me to read to her. He's trying to learn his phonics. That doesn't work. But I do tell my kids all the time, I can help two people. I cannot help more than two. It just doesn't work. I've tried. It just doesn't. It is chaos. And even one of them has told me, Mommy, you can only help two people right now, so you can't help me. I'm like, yes, that's right. So I do try to just kind of help two as much as I can, or like block, okay, this person, and my bigger kids that need help, they'll say, Mommy, I need you. Okay, I will help you. I'm going to get them to where they can do what they can, and then I'll come help you. My kindergartner, many times he wouldn't get his school done till right before dinner, but he was so content to play anyway. Then it's, our 20 minutes of our school time. That was fine. So kind of spacing out your little ones if they can do something else, and then put them in as they can. I do have one that likes to get her school done and get it done now, and I'm learning. If she has that attitude, it is not going to work for her or me, because she's like, Mommy, I want this now, and then no, I can't do it now, and he wants it now. So I have to have her stop and just take her upstairs or something. So to have her calm down and kind of like, okay, if you can't work with me and be patient, then we're not going to work at all. Because it brings down the whole atmosphere. It causes me to get anxious, angry, uptight, whatever. And so learning I feel like I have a lot of inner feelings that just kind of start bubbling. I told one of my kids, it's kind of like a tornado, when you feel that tornado starting, you need to stop, because I can feel it, and just when I'm sensing that things are not going well, that's probably I'm trying to help 4 people instead of 2, and they're all talking at once, and it's time to stop, calm down, regroup, okay, let's start again, and that happens a lot, so.
I think I also did the block scheduling, and that was very helpful. So, I would schedule one doing math from 8 to 9, and nobody else did math from 8 to 9. So if that child had questions on math or needed help, I would be able to help that child. Again, I tried to do a lot of, as many subjects as I could do with 2 or more. Was helpful. So like history, we did a lot together. And then I would have a time, so if they didn't finish their schoolwork we try to get my schedule, we would do a 50-minute increment. If they finished their math in that time, then they could go on to something else. And then we would take about a 10-minute break, come back and do another subject. So trying to just vary who, especially math, seems to need the most help, or science. But so the block scheduling, I think, is really key. And then also I would have them be patient and wait. And so if you're not finished with math and you had a question on that, then that's going to get set aside. And then in the afternoon, then I had a time when they could come and I would work with that child individually. And I think that's helpful for them, just to learn to be able to not, maybe put it aside and think about it, but also it's not, I need this done now, so they're able to put it aside and wait for my schedule. So, just having that time. I had a daughter that really struggled with math, and so I had that hour with her, and there were no interruptions. She needed my very one-on-one, and it made a huge difference in her math schedule, but the other kids were not allowed to bother me during that time that I was working with her. Also, incorporating your older kids for help is huge. And just, everybody needing you at once. Well, this older child, he can help with math if he had a minute. I really tried not to bother the older kids too much during their school, if they were able to maybe help in the evenings, but I really tried not to bother them too much unless it was voluntary. I didn't want that to be, they were willing to do it, but I tried to, their schooling is a priority in high school, and so tried not to rely on them too much, but I think the block scheduling is really helpful. And also, in my home school, we, with history or whatever, the kids, they had to raise their hand, like just in school. It sounds silly maybe because we're homeschoolers, but there's just a courteousness of I'm not talking while mom's talking. And I had one child who was, I felt like that was always kind of his personality of challenging me, of talking when his other siblings were talking or when I was talking. And so, then there's consequences for that, of either being sent out of the room and going to your room for a while until you can learn to be polite and courteous. But I did have them raise their hand. If you have a question, let's raise your hand if we're all doing history together. We're not going to just talk over each other. So I did that as well. Go ahead.
It just made me think something that Clayton, my son-in-law, as of this summer, had said to me. He said, I felt like being homeschooled taught me a lot of resilience. And just hearing the other moms talk, you aren't able to help them right away. You can't. You can't help all of them at the same time. And so that builds having to do a lot of it yourself, because your mom isn't there to meet all your needs. And so I just want to encourage you guys. Sometimes it feels like, I just can't be everything to everybody. It builds resilience, and when they're older, they're going to be grateful.
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out.
It also teaches patience. I was just realizing too, you've got to learn to wait. You are not the only one in this family. Sorry. And we're the only one in the world. You've got to learn to think about somebody else. So if you need, and I'm still learning to teach this to my kids and learning it myself, they don't all have to be helped at once. So, you learn to wait, and you also learn when mommy's helping you, you got to have a good attitude, and we got to work, not just kind of stare into la la land and forget to write your answer down, because it's wasting someone else's time. And we have to deal with that a lot too, especially if someone's having bad attitude, and say, okay, if you're not going to work now, I'm going to go to somebody else. But just learning to show love to each other, even in interrupting. I'll have 5 of them trying to talk to me at once. And then I'll realize I'm not listening to any of them. I'm trying to listen to all of them, and I'm not listening to any of them. But learning to wait a minute. This person was talking first, and you wait, and then they also have to be kind and not speak for an hour. Then they can't, their other siblings can't remember what they wanted to say. So it's just a lot of character training too, is just learning to be patient, for the mom to be patient, for the children to be patient and think of others and not just themselves. And I think that's one thing I really need to work with my own kids on, is just, you're not the only one. We all have school to do. We're all going to get it done, and we're going to show love to each other in the process.
And part of that too was the younger kids remember things now. They're not going to remember it in 2 hours. Or the older kids do, so sometimes you can put them off a little bit longer. And then during nap times or play times, for the younger kids, that's when you can get to the older ones, because the younger ones are busy, so that helped too.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more questions left I can ask, but I'd like to open this time up for if anybody has any questions that they've been kind of itching to pick their brains on. Well, I'll go. Because I thought earlier today, I was wondering, did any of you guys deal with any children that were more neurodivergent, like they either had maybe ADHD, OCD, autism spectrum, anything like that? And how did you, if so, how did you navigate that? Or what was the biggest struggle and how did you deal with it and that kind of thing?
I just had typical rebellious kids.
Well, yeah.
Straight centers for me too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're all sinners, my husband would say.
Yeah.
One of my children was never diagnosed with ADHD, but I think they had that. And so he would get very distracted, we said if he went to school, he would either be the one bullying everybody or he'd be bullied. He just was very distracted, very active, and so just a lot of activities for that one. My homeschooling changed a lot with him, and so just letting him go run, letting him the Aaron's thinking putty or fidget toys, that kind of thing. Also just being a little bit more relaxed with him and being patient with him. So, he was never diagnosed, but, and now he would say, he realizes even now as he's in college that just how he has to, something he still struggles with, just learning how to manage his time and prioritize his time because of his distractions. He's just easily distracted. But it's neat to see him mature in that and how he's learning to manage that. So.
From my husband, he's always asked me, how can I be involved? And I wonder, other than grading a paper in the evening when he comes home, how are your husbands involved? You mentioned your husband got involved with the curriculum. That's helpful. We even so how are your husbands?
My husband would listen to me and then do something like, okay, I'll have a talk with the kids, or maybe you just need a break, so tomorrow just call it park day or something like that. And the biggest thing he would do, he would do the dishes, or he would check the papers. Just make sure these math problems are right. Can you here's the answer key, can you just check this for me? And that's what he would do. And he was just a great support in trying to encourage me, and that's what I needed most of the time.
My husband did not help with any of the academics at all until they got to college. And funny enough, I never went to college. And so I was the kids' teacher, and no joke, as soon as they went to college, it was like, Mom doesn't know what she's doing. And they would automatically turn to their dad. And you would think this might have hurt my feelings a little bit. And I was like, yes. You're right. I've never been to college. I wouldn't know how to write that paper. It was wonderful having him get involved with their writing and their essays and their comp and all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic. But now because Kale's like, I need to know how to write. And I'm like, crack me up, okay. And so then sometimes Chad will give him writing assignments and then be like, turn it in on my desk. But it's been a beautiful thing. I've never been so glad that I've never been to college.
That'll just help with the math sometimes because he's an engineer, but opposite of your husband in that he doesn't like schedules. I just think it's funny. But he does, I think, explain the math problems a little bit above. But he will help with the math sometimes because Essie says I can teach her kids preschool, 1st and 2nd grade, but 3rd grade and up, at least in math, I can't do. So I think I know a little bit more than that, but anyway. So math he helps with, but more I think it's just my attitude sometimes, been to listen to me. And one thing I have appreciated about him being at home is he has learned if I'm kind of cranky or something, there might be something on my mind I've got to get worked out or a whole day is gone. I mean, it's just a mess. And right now when I have to help his, dress his wound from his incision, he can sense if I'm kind of grumpy, and he'll sit down after we're done. I have to sit on his lap. He goes, "Are you okay?" Nope. And so that is helpful. I mean, just him knowing she's having a bad day. We got to get this talked out quick, or we're going to have a really bad day. And sometimes, I mean, since Josh goes to work, you can't do that in the morning. But if he, that's just something that's been helpful for me. I just realized, just as I'm speaking, that if he knows my attitude, and he will stop and say, okay, we've got to get this. You got to get right. What bothered you? What text did you read that somebody said something and it's bothering you? Or what happened at church and it's bothering you? Let's get it talked out and worked out, and then it's better. And I think that has actually really helped a ton. And just being there to, help, not necessarily the homeschooling, but just even house things, in the evening when I'm tired.
Yeah.
And he will
Huge.
wipe the table and clean the floor and help
the
the dishes.
dishes
And
and-
when the kids were little, I mean, we called it date night from like 11 to 12 was doing the dishes and cleaning up. I mean, that was our date time. And because we had so many littles, once we finally got them to bed and then clean up, and it wasn't up to me, it was the two of us cleaning up the kitchen. Now the kids do it, so that's helpful. But, we help them. But
I guess if your husband wants to be involved, I would let him. I mean, if there's something that he is gifted in teaching, or a area that is kind of his expertise, maybe saving that for when he gets home from work. My husband, he was too busy with his job to be too much involved, but I am not a writer, and I love English and I love grammar, but I am not a writer. And so that is one thing that he has done for me over the years, because he's a mechanical engineer professor, and so he writes journal publications, so he has writing experience. Very technical writing experience, but he graded all the kids' writing papers for me and would sit down with them about once a month and go over them. And my oldest son the other day said to my husband, he said, Dad, you didn't really teach us creative writing, but you really taught us the basics of writing, which is what is needed. And so that was huge for me, because then I didn't have to worry about grading writing, because it's just not my forte. So that is one way that my husband has been able to help with a full-time job, which was huge for me, because I'm not there. I could add the commas and I can do the spelling and all that, but not, I don't know, he just was very good at that. And also, the math, little things like that when necessary to call him. But I would say, if they want to be involved, yeah, I would definitely take them up on that.
When my two older boys were older too, my husband had a job where he needed help in the summer especially, but even during the school year, if he needed help, he'd call the boys in and he'd say, hey, I need help 3 hours this afternoon, can you come help me do whatever, which was just a plus. Because they learned a lot about society, under my husband's tutelage, which was really good. And he was always very patient with the kids. Like if he was out there working on a car or something, all the kids would be there and he'd say, hand me the wrench. And especially the girls were like, which one's the wrench? So they kind of figured stuff out because he was very patient about having them help do whatever it was he was doing. So that was very helpful life skills there.
I have a question. Is there anything specifically that you did? I know like the Simoners here, you mentioned like basically kind of self-taught, now that you kind of to like high school, they kind of get more on their own. Is there anything specific that you did to help them just kind of with that and reading and teaching themselves and figuring out certain things? You're kind of
That was super gradual. I mean, it was one of those things that, and that was something Clayton said was, you got to watch those kids, he said, because they're all sinners. And he said they will cut corners. They will try not to do their schoolwork. And he said his dad caught him. And I'm going to have to ask him more later because this was just a text. But Clayton had skipped like, I know, he's such an amazing man. He skipped like, I don't know how much of his math and didn't do his math. And I am so amused by this, so I can't wait to hear more. But his dad called him on it and was like, do you want to be stupid for the rest of your life? Which totally cracks me up. But it calls them out on, this is your responsibility. And funny enough, Hallie also figured out a way to skip a whole bunch of her math at one point. And when I went to check it, I think she had like ripped out the pages so I wouldn't notice that some of the pages were missing. And so then I was just grading, and then I was like, I'm sorry, I did notice this. So just realizing that they are sinners, and that just that accountability, my kids said, Mom, we could have used more accountability, but just it was that gradual, like, okay, when are they ready for this, and kind of sticking your toe in the water. So for Kale, he is my boy, and so I was like, he needs to have the reins on this as soon as possible, because he's mature enough. He doesn't have a baby personality, so he's mature enough to do this. But also he farms, and so he takes off usually October, and then April, and then usually June. And whenever he gets it finished up. And so I'm not always available during the times that he's doing his school. And so I would kind of like check with math and just kind of be like, hey, why don't you grade a couple of those? And then we would check, how did that go? Did you feel like that you learned that really well? And just kind of checking their maturity, and also when they took that responsibility for learning. Like, you're going to grow up. And so I could kind of tell it with Kale when he started saying, Mom, I need to know more writing. Because he's already thinking college. So if he's thinking college, then, or he would come to me and say, I'm really struggling with trying to stay focused on this. So I think I just need to go, like, do a lap around the house. And just because that boy energy, they just get up and they're, and they can only sit for so long. And then just getting them to realize what they need to do to keep focused. And then as he picked up that maturity, then it was like, okay, well, here's your science. And then I would buy them the science, that would read it to them so they knew how to pronounce it. It's also, my youngest two just did not do as well with reading comprehension, and I wanted chemistry to really stick. And yet just making sure that he was ready for that, he was ready sooner than Aubrey. So realizing where your kids are, and the fact that I'm going to be an adult soon, I'm going to be going to college, and then giving them those reins, so to speak. So then when they get to college, there wasn't any, I don't know how to do this on my own, and my kids said it was super beneficial taking college classes when they were at home, because they were able to ask questions of us when we were there, and yet kind of that, okay, how do I figure this out? And then it was kind of like, okay, like teaching them to ride a bike. Okay, let's just go. And then pretty soon it was like they didn't need any more help anymore. And so it's just kind of figuring that out and kind of gaining their confidence. Did I answer that? Okay.
No other questions? I've got one more, I guess I'll ask, that was in here, and that was, does grading really matter? Or do grades really matter? I think it was the
I would
question.
say yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's my short answer. I do think grades matter. I had one of my children really struggled in math, and I feel like if I wouldn't have graded things, I wouldn't have been able to see that. I actually made that child repeat. I think it was Algebra 1, I don't remember, and which was good for her and good for me. So I think if I wouldn't have graded things, then I wouldn't have seen that she wasn't grasping and that I needed to repeat that. So I do think grades do matter.
I would say part of the time when they're younger that they matter, because they need to know that they need to keep up and this is what you expect, and then they have to redo a few things. But I would definitely keep those grades in high school and keep a really good, what do I want to say, grade, like a grade point average, a schedule, those kind of things. Because even after they graduate from high school, 5 years down the road when they are looking for a different job, they want to know what those grades are, and they want to know, what they've been taught, even though it doesn't really matter. I don't know why they want to look at that, but they do. So that's when you really need to keep really, really good records for them, for their sake, for their jobs. But in the younger years, just so that you can know where they're at and they can know where they're at, but not to put a lot of emphasis on that. Just my opinion.
Also, if they're planning on going to college, even though they're, so to speak, at the top of their class, it can make a difference for scholarships. And so that GPA does matter, especially in high school. So.
My kids said they were all the valedictorians of their class.
I did not grade, ever, really. They did their Saxon math online, so we did Nicole the math lady. So Nicole the math lady graded them, and it was wonderful. I didn't know exactly how it would work when they got to college. That's why they said the college classes was really easy, but I had Mom really encourage me and say, hey, if you know where they would be, you just need to put that grade on their transcript. And so when I did their transcripts, I put the grades on them where I knew that they would be. And she said, they might not be exactly where you want them to be, but if they're excelling in this, you need to actually give them the grades rather than actually basing it off of yourself. And so that was really helpful for me. And then when they went to college, they were able to do really well. I looking back, maybe I should have graded them because my older two are a little obsessive about their grades, a little bit too obsessive about their grades. As to where I feel like they should spend more time having fun, because I feel like maybe they put too much work into having a top grade. But I don't know, maybe that didn't affect grading, maybe it wasn't, but they've all, my kids that have went to college have had zero issue being really great in their classes.
Yeah, my kids didn't have any trouble in the college arena either, because they wanted to go and they wanted to do those things, which made a big difference. I struggle with the transcript because if they didn't put enough effort into English, I couldn't give them an A. I mean, a couple of them I gave them, like a C-, and they're like, well, this isn't fair. Well, you're the one that did that type of work, so I'm sorry, but I can't not be honest on your transcript. And I had told them that when they were in 8th grade, that this is what they're looking forward to, when they were freshmen, so I felt like it was on them. But then when they did go to college, and they did high school college credit, in the state of Iowa, you're allowed to do that. And it's because they wanted to, and so then they got decent grades.
Yeah, I was just going to say, any more last questions?
I know homeschooling has gotten more popular, but did you ever have to explain yourself to any neighbors or anything? Or, keeping them inside until 3 o'clock, like that's not possible for my children. Like, they can't be outside.
I don't think you should keep them inside. Kids need to be kids. And I mean, especially for the neighbors, well, we're doing what's best for our family right now, and it's recess time. So, you know, I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you like confront your neighbors about like they've never personally said anything to us, so we have some issues, and I don't know how to.
Approach them. I would probably go to them and say, hey, I heard you talking about my family, in kind of a polite way. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them for you. I would be glad to explain our position for you, but I'd appreciate it if you come directly to me so I could give you my perspective on that, and then be very gracious before the Lord with, your wording and that type of thing. But in all fairness, it's none of their business. You have to answer to God for what you do, and then just kind of have to go with it no matter the opposition. So,
I think the worst for me, and it was very minimal, was when I would take them grocery shopping in the morning or the afternoon, and every single time, why are you guys in school? What are you doing out of school? As if I had my sick kids in Aldi because I had to go pick them up at school. But I would say for other people, I knew other homeschooling moms at times struggled when people felt like their kids should be in school. Maybe they weren't as outgoing, and there was a little bit of a pressure. If you just send them to school, they'll be outgoing. And that's not the case. It's just that child might be a little bit more introverted than the other children. So, but I've also been on the end of having to encourage a homeschool mom to send her child to school. And that's just something that's approached with a lot of prayer with me and the mom, but just when homeschooling doesn't work, because either what the child's choices are or where the mom and the child's relationship is, it's not a great place to be, but homeschooling is definitely not the answer for everybody in every age.
we did a lot of, we're off today, or we're taking a break, or things like that when they were little. And then when they got a little older, oh, we homeschool. And I didn't have too many negative comments. Or she's like, oh, well, what are you learning? And they'd come up with some obscure thing, which I was like, okay, good. It's a safe answer,
Nothing.
But a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, my cousin in, Arkansas is doing that. Or, oh, I knew somebody when I lived in California, my neighbor did that. Or, oh, wow, you must be a super mom. And no, I'm just a normal mom who, is trying to do the best I can for my kids, just like any mom, so.
And hopefully as they get older, they'll start making homeschool jokes about themselves. And then be able to laugh at, it's a thing. It wasn't when they were younger, but they're always making homeschool jokes about themselves. We don't know that we're homeschooled. And then when other kids are meaning things as a compliment, and they say things like, we couldn't even tell you were homeschooled. And then you just got to laugh and give grace and realize they didn't mean that in a bad way. I mean, they might have, but even if they did, just to laugh it off.
I had a neighbor that she wasn't a teacher, but somehow she was in the school district. And I always felt a little leery of her just because of her personality and just comments that were made. But I think just, being open, and I think having the kids too, just saying, oh, we're homeschooled. And I think a lot of it was I wasn't giving her the benefit of the doubt. There was never any issues. I just was always a little careful around her just because of who she was and her life. So, I think just being careful, but also just being open and honest and kind and loving to them, and just showing them that you're not you're not an alien, so to speak, that you're just normal people that have chosen to, and it's so much more popular now, especially after COVID. I don't think it's much of an issue anymore. Back in my day, you took the kids out and they're, well, why aren't you in school? What's going on? And some people were not very nice about it. I rarely run into that anymore. But my kids are a lot older, I only have now, 2 in school. So, and most people are very accepting of that. But I think just being kind and trying to come to them in understanding, so.
All right, well, we're past our time now, so thank you, each one of you ladies, so much for coming, and we just so appreciate it, and just, we are going to, I'm trying to think of our announcements, we're going to have a survey that's going to be on our website here soon for you guys to fill out in regards to next year's home group. And we'll also plan to have a cookout sometime in July, I believe, so keep on the lookout for that because it's a lot of fun. So, and that's it. So thank you everyone so much. We really appreciate it.
Now I'm more it's just things differently. Yeah. I've had that both in my head a lot this year. Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. But you're supposed to read it in college. It's good to hear that. I grade just because I need to know where they are. I really know, but I don't except at home that are failing. And my kids haven't gone to college yet. So I was curious from other moms, is that important or not? That you hate it?
I'm open for questions. Why not my desk?
Oh, that's so cute.
I didn't give them really like why am I got your desk? I remember that, but that was the time that they could come in.
I'd be grateful.
I can relate to that. Like, I was so kind and you can come and ask me questions, I'm free, but also. And not get this from me. Let them rule the day, I think that's important is that, I think that should be a common component for like Laura was saying. For my daughter's need your help, but I'm going to hold on and well, that's good, but, that not everything revolves around you.
Oh, yeah, I have one too.
I don't know. My sisters are like that in college. They do like having a test and like, I'm gonna fail, and it always made over 100.
The little one.
And my mom graded it, so I don't think it was.
Like, I think with COVID and stuff, it was kind of hard.
It's just their personality.
You're going to, like the outside thing. Everyone here's so bigger than
Really did
so I'm trying to make sure like, I know Aubrey would be like, but you're trying to get everybody people, so you can kind of come if you want. And I had that thought on the way here, I'm like, I tried to brighten when I was two of these. And now I'm navigating that in my head, like, well, it would become up like,
Yeah, it is.
But it never got work, so I'm like, anyway, thank you for your patience with that.
Yeah,
so like, you're such a,
And that's kind of, I'm like, am I gonna, I'm like, surely Kale will be
all
like,
boy, and I'm like,
I don't
that's a nice way of saying it.
I'm like,
He's my, like, just, I don't know what like, strong-willed child.
but they just said,
But anyway,
going
and then I have
was
a
really
8-month-old.
stressful.
So,
You're
so
happy now?
so everyone's pretty
That was nice to hear.
But it's hard.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That was 20.
I wish I would. And I'm just looking to see,
Looking back on it, but I wish I would have, but what do I have done with it?
navigate that.
I know, that's what Dennis keeps saying,
I mean, I just now be starting to use it. Even then, I don't know if I'd actually be able to use it, because even though Kale does almost everything on